Good afternoon, everybody. There's more noise in this room than we've had all day. You must have had some kind of lunch, power lunch out there. Did you enjoy lunch?
Yes.
Yes? Did you meet somebody new?
Yes.
Good. If you didn't, you have to do that at the next coffee break, because that's part of this too, to create these collaborations that happen at events like this. I had some wonderful conversations, and I really look forward to echoing them going forward. To our virtual audience joining us via webcast, welcome. Welcome back to the Sackler Colloquium. We've got a terrific afternoon for you. Remember that the hashtag is SacklerSciComm. If you want to send your questions in, do that. The moderator who is sitting here will see your questions and incorporate those into the audience. For those of you who are in the room who have questions, because so much of this is about the exchange, the dialogue, right? Not the monologue, the dialogue. We will raise your hands, and people with mics will come to you. We'll try this a little bit differently because it's a little tough out up here to see people with hands raised, but now we'll be able to do that a little bit more easily when the Q&A time comes along. So Ken Prewitt is your moderator for this next session, which is called Marshalling the Troops: How Can Traditional Disciplines Help Build the Scale of Research in Science Communication? His day job is professor at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. But Ken's kind of an interesting guy. He got, kind of the back door, I guess, because when he was young, he thought he'd join the St. Louis Cardinals when he graduated from high school. Was that to be in the infield or the outfield?
Oh, second base.
Second base. But instead he hit a home run, and now he's in academia. How's that? So he said when he called to find out about that, second base thing, he said, the folks at the other end of the call said, we'll be in touch. In any case, after he got his PhD from Stanford, 10 years later, he started his career at Wash U, so he could be close by when they called. They didn't. Here he is. Ken, to you.
I resent the way that... I resent the way I was just introduced, because you said it in such a way, Frank, that you think they aren't. I'm still waiting. I do change phone numbers from time to time. I always send it back in, just in case. Marshalling the troops. It's a nice phrase, and in some respects it puts me in mind to introduce this by saying that we should perhaps have titled the colloquium "The Sciences for the Communication of Sciences," because, as we've already heard in a number of conversations this morning, this is highly contextual stuff. There's not one form of science right now that we can generalize to the entire system. So let me emphasize that by saying we're going to cover three topics, each by two speakers. Energy. Energy as a phenomena about which we want to communicate has the characteristic that it's huge, and the academic work on it is right next door to the engineers and the engineering firms and the Exxons and the whole industry out there and so forth. So there's a relationship between the work we're doing and a huge spread of actors, not just policy actors, but commercial actors and so forth. Immigration, if you think about it for a moment, when you're doing your academic work on immigration that you want to communicate, what's kind of right next to it are a lot of advocacy groups. It's not an industry. And there's nothing like a professional school of how to handle the immigration problem. So the communication of what we learn about immigration has got to move in through the advocacy system, probably to reach the policy audience. So it's going to be mediated by that layer. And then infectious diseases. Infectious diseases, of course, the science is right next to medical schools and hospitals and public health schools, as well as a huge industry of the pharmas, the biochemistry and so forth. So that when we actually think about how we're going to communicate the science over here that we're generating, we've got to have in mind really very different mechanisms and processes, because the places that are going to use it and take advantage of it or not, or ignore it or misrepresent it, themselves have their own sort of characteristics. So with that, I'm going to turn the panel over to our first two speakers, Granger Morgan and Wendy Runde. Now, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I got that wrong. She's been very generous about me. I said that I have language problems, including names. She's wearing purple. That's because she comes from royalty. And Granger is so enamored of the fact that she is from royalty that he's showing this with his green shirt, because he really thinks that green goes well with purple, which of course it does. They are they work very closely together, and they want to illustrate that, in effect, exemplify that, by in fact almost giving a joint presentation. Her slides are in purple and his are in green.
For your enjoyment.